All right. The next section, this video you found, and I know we're probably gonna replay it.
All right, yes, I do. So if anyone remembers, maybe about 7 or 8 podcasts ago, we actually brought a video on from YouTube from someone called Rory Sutherland, an English fella who likes to talk a lot about marketing stuff. So I actually saw another video of his recently. I wanted to share this with you, Christy, to get your take on it. Like the beginning part of the videos, maybe a little bit, I don't know, not exactly the point of the video of why I'm bringing this up, but it's more the end. So like stick with it to the end, okay? It's also like a little bit flashy and maybe a bit annoying of a video. So just give it a watch.
So with one client, an airline, very early client, we basically did a little change to their website, which cost 25,000 quid. They paid us 25,000 quid for the advice, and it made them 10 million pounds in extra revenue that year and every year thereafter. They never came back. Okay, maybe it's because actually that whenever anything spectacular happens, the finance people or the logistics people just claim all the credit. Because the marketers never really get the credit, do they, for a breakthrough? I would argue that marketing is a casino with pretty good odds, but it's still a casino. You know when the finance director becomes the CEO?
Yes.
It's always that little death rattle for a business,
Yes.
right? And that's because finance people are deterministic and they adore predictability. Fundamentally, the job of the CEO is you have to accept that business is probabilistic.
I kind of want to know what change they did to the website that made them $10 million.
The other thing, if anyone wants to know, quid is pounds, British pounds. If anyone didn't know that.
Which is kind of a dollar.
Well, it's the
Ish.
equivalent, yes. But like, if people are like, what the hell is he talking about? Like 2 million quid? What is a quid?
Squid?
Squid? 2 million squid? So what do you think? Are finance people too deterministic?
I not all of them, but I think most of them. I think so many times when we've brought like finance people into the fold, they're always just so focused on ROI. And I think it's like, so like any ops person knows, like trying to actually get true ROI is just impossible. Like, especially in B2B, like how, what are you using to calculate that? Like, 'cause there's so many different touches that can impact a sale. And ROI, if you're trying to do an exact measurement, like there's a few different ways you can do that. And if you want to hear our thoughts about ROI, we definitely have a lot of podcasts about that.
Yeah, I
But
feel like a
that's always
few
the
podcasts
thing.
ago we did a deep dive on that for sure.
Yeah. But I have actually had some finance folks who were refreshingly the opposite, where I most recently we chatted because the marketing team was actually trying to calculate ROI, and they were like, well, is that kind of like a peacock measurement though? Like, are you actually going to get what you're like looking for with that? And so I thought that was like kind of refreshing to hear, because I think usually from that side, we're always like pressured, like to get the data, or what is the ROI, like literally from a campaign like 2 weeks ago, and it's like, oh, that's not how it works.
Or if we put $1
and
here, how many dollars are we going to get out?
yeah.
If we put $1 into this specific channel, how many dollars do we get out? Very much unit based and deterministic,
like projection, modeling, all that, which I think does fit into their world. But the problem with, and he calls marketing's a casino. It's so true. In some ways, you're making bets, and a lot, I think the problem is that marketers, like historically, recently, have not been making bets based on what they actually feel like is going to work. They're making bets based on what they feel like they can easily measure, or what they can easily prove. And that is what I think is the problem. And so when you add that element of like CFO is now determining what CMO does, that's just what happens. Like they're going to take away a lot of the good stuff of marketing. And the interesting thing is right now with marketing, the things that normally used to work that were more deterministic, or you can get kind of a CPL or whatnot, don't work. Like we see the conversion rate of like content syndication and so forth. People not doing brand marketing or even trying to build a brand, not using like influencers, all that. It's just kind of the death of marketing, in my opinion. It's the old playbook that just doesn't work anymore. So yeah, I think it's a warning, but it's like so true. And I think companies need to be, I think CEOs too, kind of almost need like a deep dive. It's almost like their VCs or something need to put them through a boot camp that kind of trains them on this. But the problem is a lot of the time the VCs also are pressuring them like, hey, show me how your channels are working. What are you getting out of it? Out of the money that you're spending that we gave you. And so it's just this ever perpetuating kind of flywheel that I think is burning out CMOs because they're not doing what they want to do. And then on top of it, they're struggling to really report in the way that they need to show their worth. And it's just a recipe for disaster right now, I think.
It is. And I've definitely had, like you said, conversations with finance people on both sides of the equation. So it's not like every finance person's coming in saying like we need this exact measurement. But I would say when you compare them to the marketers in the trenches and maybe the go-to-market ops, marketing ops people, they definitely skew towards more of the we need to know like dollar in, dollar out type reporting, which I've tried to explain time and time again is just very difficult to get with the type of data that we're working with. And sometimes they appreciate the explanation and sometimes they're just like, no, we still need this. And the problem is, like you said, when you take that to its extreme, your marketing actually gets worse, right? Because so many of the actual best channels or tactics or marketing activities are the ones that are the hardest to track and therefore are the hardest to show like true ROI or we spent X amount of money on this. Here is all of the pipeline that came from that. And then you add in all of the touch points and you go, well, then how do we determine that this $1 million art should be split up across these touch points? All of the models are very arbitrary, right? It's like, well, we either divide it up equally, which is probably my favorite method, pros and cons, or we do it based on different milestones in the customer journey. But then that has massive issues like W shape, which is like, well, who cares that they did that email click before the opportunity was created? That shouldn't get 30% of the deal. You can maybe get some kind of custom weighted machine learning model, but then no one trusts that because you start to see weird things happening in that. And you go like, well, why did this get more credit than this? And then you get into the credit game and everyone's like going, well, my event should get 20% and that demand gen, LinkedIn lead gen form should get 5%. And why is it reversed? And now everyone's just arguing about that and not going and just doing really good marketing, right? So it's a really tough one because on one hand, I get it. We need to measure marketing and there's lots of ways to measure marketing and you need to be able to do it to be able to improve. On the other hand, when you need such binary or such perfection in the reporting, it completely takes you off track from what's important. So
100%. I think the telling sign too is kind of, one of the pioneers of that like messaging, like John Miller, like when I was at Marketo, he had his little narrative around if CMOs want to see at the table, you have to bring this data, you need to talk about ROI, da da da. But it was a very much different world back then. Like people were willing to fill out forms for anything. You want a data sheet, fill out a form. You go to an event, I'll scan your badge. It was very much like black and white at the time. And so you could literally like track your dollar to that person so easily and still do quote unquote good marketing. But now he's even come forward and it's like that doesn't work anymore. And then our ways of trying to do this measurement to prove our marketing doesn't work. He even used the improve not prove statement like you said on LinkedIn, which is what we talk about a lot. So just seeing that evolution of someone who once touted one thing and is now saying the other just proves like we all need to reframe and change our mindset.
100%.
Well, all right. Was that it?
think that's it.
That's our
And we
show
do
this
have to
week.
run to another call in a minute, so
So for
there has to be it.
everyone, if you end up trying out ChatGPT, also for listeners, one thing that I don't give enough kind of shout out is we do have a newsletter that we write weekly with net new content. So if you're enjoying our podcast, you have been for a long time, and you're not a newsletter subscriber, go to cs2marketing.com and click to our resources, and there's a sign up for our newsletter, or just shout us, reply, send a note to us on LinkedIn. I'll make sure you get added.
And Chrissy won't big herself
it's a
up,
great.
but she does the newsletter every week, and in there is always a post that doesn't really get shared anywhere else, like a dedicated post for the newsletter, plus some other things, and it's always top quality. Some of our best content, or CS2's best content, is in that newsletter. So if you haven't signed up, you should, and get direct access to all of Chrissy's thoughts. So I'm biased, of course, but it's my favorite newsletter. And I honestly get a lot out of it. So from work advice, life advice, ops advice, it's good.
It's a good mix of both. It's a good reprieve for your Friday morning, and it's my labor of love. So if you do want, you'll just make me happy just from subscribing. Even if you unsubscribe maybe a week later, it's okay. All right, folks. Well, we'll see you next time on the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, like I said, share it with a colleague or friend, and see you next time. Bye.